In August of 1884, Marquise de Dampierre died. Her death was stated in many Parisian newspapers because of her reputation. She was the aristocrat that could not stop publicly shouting out inappropriate or obscene words. This behavior, especially in the noble families of the time, including her family, was unheard of. Her family was educated, polite, and professional. Her behavior was completely opposite from what her family insinuated. 1825 was the first time her case was ever reported. Physician Jean-Marc Gaspard Itard, who 25 years before had been credited with educating Victor, the wild child of Aveyron, recorded the behavior of Madame de Dampierre. In his article, he stated, "In the midst of a conversation that interests her extremely, all of a sudden, without being able to prevent it, she interrupts what she's saying or what she's listening to with bizarre shouts and words that are even more extraordinary and which make a deplorable able contrast with her intellect and her distinguished manners. These words are for the most part gross swear words and obscene epithets, and something that is no less embarrassing for her than the listeners. An extremely crude expression of a judgment or an unfavorable opinion of someone in the group." Madame de Dampierre was only 26 at the time this article was published. This was 18 years after her symptoms even began. In her late years, the Marquise was diagnosed and treated, however, this diagnosis was not published until several years later. Itard, who first diagnosed the Marquise, believed her disorder was a disorder of human will. He believed a weak will could be strengthened by exercising it. To do this, Itard relied heavily on shaming. Advocates of the moral treatment believed that health depended on the combination of diet, atmosphere, climate, work, and lifestyle. Disease, even lesions in the brain, resulted from the imbalance of these elements. Fed by a belief that, like the environment, individuals were malleable, suppressive modes of control were de-emphasized in favor of a more repressive behavior. Itard perceived his female patients as victims of domestic unhappiness, which caused brain irritations. These irritations in turn weakened their will, causing the motor tics and involuntary vocalizations. His therapy included things like general bleeding, applications of cups of leeches, and use of antispasmodics. Although Itard never revealed what he believed were the environmental deprivations that had weakened Madame de Dampierre's will specifically, he believed her suffering would eventually diminish if she adapted herself to the role of wife, and eventually to the role of mother. The studies done on the Marquise allowed for more research into the cause of this disorder and what actually caused it. Many different theories arose from this. One was from the 1880s. This was from Freud. He believed that Tourette's was actually just hysteria and not a disease of its own. Another theory, in 1907, was from Henry Mage and his partner. They believed that Tourette's resulted from uncorrected infantile habits in a population added to hereditary weakness. Throughout the 1920s and the 1930s, many psychoanalysts believed Tourette's was a sequel to rheumatic disease. This disease affects joints and muscles. Psychoanalysts met this challenge to their assumptions about the etiology of tics by classifying some symptoms resulting from this infection, and some symptoms result from repressed childhood sexual conflict. Almost no one from 1885 to 1968 accepted the original hypothesis of Tourette's being a neurological disorder. Tourette's today is classified as a neurological disorder characterized by repetitive, stereotyped, involuntary movements and vocalizations called tics by the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke. There is, however, no medicine that is helpful to everyone with Tourette's. The medication prescribed depends on the severity of the tics a person experiences. They can be prescribed anything from neuroleptics for extreme tics, or just attending awareness training for more mild tics. Tourette's today affects about 5.2 out of every 10,000 people in the United States, and males are 4 to 5 times more likely to have it than females. Because physicians and researchers can't agree on which symptoms should be included and not included in the diagnosis of Tourette's, There are many contradictory findings to the prevalence of this disorder.